So my therapist wants me to start trying to hold on to excitement, which is very daunting for me because excitement and I have had a sordid history. Usually, I would say a solid like 80% of the time, if I get excited about something, it doesn't actually happen. Um, but I get super excited because I stupidly get convinced, well, maybe it could happen, or maybe it's going to work out this time, or oh, this person promised and then they don't follow through, or I mean, whatever it is, something happens, and it just can't happen. And it's like, fuck it all. um, it can be a little thing like, hey, there's this promise of, I don't know, blueberry pie, and then someone gets busy and they can't make the blueberry pie that day. And then the next day they can't make it either. And then the next day they just can't make it. So they're like, you know what? I'll do it on the weekend. You still get your pie, and then the weekend gets there and the blueberries are rotten and you don't get pie. Or it can be massive things like for example, first time I ever moved out on my own, away from any parents at all. Um, I was moving into this house and they were taking me there to move into it and to show me around and stuff. They opened the door and it's filthy inside, and somebody's been storing like some sort of boating gear or something in there. And they were like, oh. And they were, apologetic and obviously irritated at whoever had done that. But I had a car full of stuff and I had to drive all the way back with my car full of stuff. And I called my mom crying at my lunch break that they said I couldn't move in, and that I wouldn't be able to move in probably for several days. Um, she told them I had been crying and stuff, and they made it so I could move in the next day. They did a rush job on it. Um, but yeah, it it's disappointing because it was my first move out into my own. Like it was my first place that I could do myself. I could decorate myself. It was a house that was a duplex. So I had a backyard. I had like actual bedrooms to decorate and shit. And I did eventually get to move in, but there's almost no excitement left. I I just sometimes life's cruel, and that's not particularly cruel. That's just disappointing. But like I grew up really poor, and there was this time um that I really, really didn't want to go to school with a nasty, falling apart, super cheaply made plastic backpack. I wanted to have a backpack that looked like every other kid's backpack. I wanted to have a real backpack, like an actual one. And I begged and begged for it. And my birth mother was like, you can have it if you help pay for it right now. And I was like, can't we come back and get it another time? No. And, and I had been begging for it for a while. So, of course, she picked this day to get it. And she's like, use some of your own money and you pay for half of it. I was like, but I can't because someone's birthday's coming. I won't be able to give them a birthday present. And she was like, well, you obviously don't want the backpack. And I was like, I do, desperately. I very much want the backpack, but I also don't want my one and only friend to not have a birthday present. And that wouldn't be nice. I mean, what kind of friend am I if I don't give them presents? She's just like, I guess you don't want the backpack. I guess you don't want the backpack. And when she said, hey, we can get a backpack today, after I'd been begging for one for I don't even remember how long it was, like a month or something. And then I had been wanting one for every school year I'd ever gone to school. I just, for her to do that was devastating. And then as we were at the checkout counter and she was buying her stuff and I was just crying, she was like, "Oh, by the way, if you would have said that you would have helped pay for it, I would have known you actually wanted it and I would have just bought the whole thing and wouldn't have made you pay for any of it. But now I know you're just a liar." And I'm just like, just never want anything ever again. Like, the backpack she bought me that day was worse than the usual ones. The usual ones were cheap and terrible, but she bought me not even a backpack. It was cheap and terrible and looked like it was for like putting folders inside of. Like it wouldn't even hold school books. It was so flimsy. And it had one single sewn zigzag pencil case looking pocket in the front, and that was it. She bought me the worst possible thing that she could that was there, and it probably was like $2. And I had to use that for the whole school year because not only did she want to power trip, but she had to prove a point that I don't know, liars don't get rewarded or something, even though I wasn't lying. I mean, that's literally my life. That situation didn't happen just once. That situation happened over and over and over again. And you get out into adult life and you think, hey, I'm in charge of my life now. Hey, things will go better or whatever it is. And that's not true. Life, I mean, it's a really cliche thing to say, but life is not fair. Um, life has no feelings. Life doesn't give one shit one way or the other whether or not you're enjoying life or not. Um, that's not how it works. I I don't know how to hold on to excitement. Almost every situation I've ever been genuinely excited about ended up bad for the most part, unless my mom was involved. Not my birth mother, my mom. My mom tries to make everyone feel good. But if she's not involved, most situations just end up. And people say they love you. They swear up and down they love you. But I've found other people, even the ones who love you, to be completely unreliable. They all just promise more than they ever intend to actually do. And you can tell them flat out that what they're doing is painful for you, that it hurts you, that it's torture, and they'll just keep doing it because it's convenient for them and it doesn't matter how much you hurt. How much you hurt is not more important than what's convenient for them. People have done outright abusive things to me in every single relationship I've ever been in, including my current ones. And on the one hand, it's partially my fault because I give up too easily and just let them get away with it. There's no repercussions for being cruel to me other than that I'm suffering. And if I'm suffering wasn't a deterrent in the first place, it's certainly not going to feel like a repercussion. Like, I don't know. I'm trying really hard to think of a time that I was excited for something and it worked out and it didn't involve my mom. My car I have right now is the best little car I've ever had. Super reliable. It has driven me across the country. It drives me hundreds of miles a month. Um, Long distance driving back and forth between my girlfriend's place. I mean, it takes some wear and tear, and it has lasted, and it has stayed doing a good job. I try to get its oil changed completely regularly, and make sure it's taken care of and stuff because it's been a good car. And when I first bought it, I bought it outright. I I don't do loans. I don't do debt. I have no debt, and I intend to never have any debt, unless it was for like a home. I just I My parents went bankrupt when I was a child, more than once, and I remember what it's like to lose everything over and over again, and you had so little to begin with. And sometimes you can't help it. Sometimes your baby brother has such horrifically bad asthma that anytime someone says the word asthma, you can hear his little baby crying in your head while he's being strapped to a nebulizer for the rest of your life. It's such a like significant little baby cry. Him trying to breathe while crying, and they can't afford the medical bills. I mean that I don't blame them for being unable to afford that when he has to be rushed to the hospital a lot. He has to have special medicine and equipment, or else he'll die. And you have to take care of him because he's your brother. He's your baby brother. And he did survive, and he has a life and a family now and stuff. He has kids. But, that's hard. But sometimes it's just for once you live in a double wide trailer that's decorated almost like a house, and there's a garden in the yard, and you have a computer, an actual computer, and you have like a TV, and you have friends that can come over and play because you actually have like a room for them to play in instead of sharing a space all with just your brothers. Like, it's like a big deal. It's all nice, and you have, you know, this life that seems so much more full of stuff than before. And then all of a sudden it's all gone, and you're moving back to Alaska to live in the garage again. Like, I know what that's like. So I don't do debt. But my car, when I very first bought it, and I bought it outright and everything, went to drive it home, it didn't even make it home because it had a giant fuel leak in the fuel systems. And it was messed up. And my dad had to like try to help me drag it to his house. And he called the car dealership, um, got them to come and pick it up and carry it back and get it taken care of because I had already given all the money for it. It didn't, again, even make it home. And my dad had some influence in local businesses at that time just because he's very personable, and he is always looking for a deal. So he'll go into businesses and talk to people up. And he worked for a multi-million-dollar bricklaying business, and stuff. So they always wanted business from the place that my dad worked for, and he was decently high up enough in it that he could do that. He could say, "Hey, this is a good place. We should buy from them." So people, would listen to him because they knew where he worked, and they knew if they wanted to get some consistent business from a place that always would need to buy, um, to listen. So they fixed it all back up and stuff, and we had to go back out there and go drive it home again. Freaking terrified driving that thing home again. Thought for sure it was going to break down again, but it didn't. And they actually did fix the car. They said they found other things wrong with the car, so they just did a full repair on everything with the car. Um, and the car has lasted ever since. But you can't just buy the car and have it. No, you can't even drive it home. You give them all their thousands of bucks for their car. Can't even drive it home. I'm the kind of person I save up for years for things like that. I save up and I live frugally so that every once in a while we can make a big purchase because, you know, that way we don't have to go into debt. Because debt is just a massive burden that lasts years, but saving up is a minor burden that you can choose not to do a couple of months if you're really hurting, and then go back to it afterwards. Like, I don't know. The only thing that saving requires is self discipline. Debt requires being willing to be like a slave to your debtors, as far as I can tell. They're just going to hound you and hound you, and I have no interest in that. I got excited for a couple of seconds. It wasn't even for a minute. Talking about testosterone and some of the positive things that I would look forward to from it. And she was like, I want you to do that more often. I want you to get excited and hold on to that. And I'm just like, how? To get excited would mean to actually trust that a thing's going to happen. And that's just not accurate. Most things in the world aren't trustworthy. A lot of people aren't trustworthy simply because if a thing's inconvenient for them or, gonna impede their ability to do something for their own life, they're probably not gonna follow through with it. Not because they're malicious, but just because they're gonna pick their life first. They're gonna put maybe they made the promise when they had lots of energy and then it gets time to do it and they have no energy. Maybe they're just worn out. It's not a malicious thing, but most people are not reliable in my experience. Most businesses, especially here on the East Coast, for whatever reason, are not reliable. They'll say, oh, yeah, you're going to get that by Monday, and then it's like 2 weeks later and you get that. They'll say, oh, yeah, you need to turn this in, and you turn it in and nothing gets done, and you have to call and ask them to please do it. Like, for whatever reason, I have a lot of issues with stuff like that here that I didn't have in Washington State. And I don't know if it's just like a local area thing or that the East Coast just has different mentalities than the West Coast about like follow through. I don't know, but it is a noticeable difference. Um, so I don't know. The thing about life is, again, it doesn't have sentiment, you know, it just has systems in place. But the systems are not super reliable either. Like like the weather, for instance. Yes, there's a current, and the current goes around in a big circle, and you can semi rely on that current's going to go around in a big circle. But so many times something else goes on, and then stuff gets deviated, stuff gets thrown into a big tizzy, and you get storms and crap. Like, it's not consistent, it's not reliable. And some days it looks like the rain's going to come your way, and then the clouds shift suddenly and you don't get rained on. And some days it looks like it's going to be sunny, and then, oh look, um you can try to predict it, you can try to come up with ways to understand it, but it's not reliable because there's always something that could go on with it. um so not really trusting things doesn't feel out of place when so little in life is actually trustworthy. The universe always tends towards chaos, and that's true of people, that's true of businesses, that's true of life. Humans always want things to be consistent and the same and straight lines. They want to have, you know, a big carved straight line through all that chaos, and to bend nature and to bend the world into, here's our square roads and our square houses and our square buildings, and then nature just wants to grow over it. And it's a constant war between, repaving shit and nature, because nature just wants to exist. That's all it cares about. And it doesn't care about straight lines. It doesn't care about having patterns. It just wants to exist. And mankind wants more than just to exist. Mankind wants to enforce their way upon the world. And they think that they can, which is so hilarious to me, because you can't trust that. You can't trust that at all, because life still happens. And I don't know, I feel like all of mankind is a little bit of in denial. Like, we think we can somehow make ourselves in charge and take all of the inconsistency out of the world and force everything to our will, to the point where it'll all be uniform and predictable and feel secure that way or whatever. And that's not how it works at all. The only thing that I genuinely do trust is that life's going to do whatever it wants. Like, if it's alive, it's going to do something, and it's not going to be what you pick. And sometimes what you want it to do, it'll do just because that happens to be what it does, but it's not trying to, like, do it because it cares about you or because it wanted you to have a good day. It just is luck. Like, the entire universe is luck based. And as far as I can tell in my own experiences, like, and as far as I've read in science, the entire world is luck based. And there's just no way to predict any of it as a fact. There's just odds. So that's what I do. Every single thing that I look at, I'm always calculating the odds. I'm like, what are the odds of that not working? What are the odds of this person actually going ahead and doing this? Do they have any habits that support what they just said? What are the odds that this is going to improve? And sometimes the odds are decently high and it still doesn't happen, and then I'm devastated. But most of the time, that system works for me. It's kind of like the weather currents. Most of the time it goes in a circle. Sometimes there's deviations, but I mean, there is with everything. There's literally nothing in life that there's not deviations with. I mean, that I'm aware of. And some people will say math, but I don't know. I've seen some weird deviations in math, so. I don't know how to be excited because being excited requires some measure of trust. And if the odds aren't high, I don't give it that measure of trust. I don't give something trust just because the odds are like 50-50. 50-50 is not, hey, I should believe this might happen. Life's too unpredictable. And being able to just try to calculate odds for things makes it so that I can function in life and I can go with the flow of the change. And even if I have, disappointed feelings or something, I can still keep moving and doing whatever needs to be done and be flexible and add depth to the change. Like, I don't know, I think I'm a very adaptive person, personally. But, the only things that I genuinely sometimes get excited about anymore are honestly like what I would consider fantasies. They're things that are so unrealistic, but at the same time, so very much what I would want. And I, I just consider them a daydream. They're like a pipe dream. It's not that I really ever think it would happen. It's just thinking that there's just this slight tiny chance that luck could somehow flip my way and it could happen is like the thing that keeps me sane. Like, I guess it's the closest thing to hope I have. I told my therapist if Trump gets reelected, he probably isn't going to stop taking away trans healthcare rights. If he's already started, he probably wouldn't stop, which means that there's the possibility that I have like 2 years to try to transition and then I won't be able to anymore. But was going to go slow, but there's like this pressure of, well, is it even going to be an option? And then that's not something that I can decide or have a say in other than voting, but I'm one vote amongst a zillion people. And honestly, even if I didn't vote, the state that I live in would probably vote not for him anyway. So, um, I mean, obviously I'm still going to vote, but the point is that's not up to me. So how realistic is it to think, yeah, someday I'm actually going to be me and I'm going to fully be a man and I'm going to be able to have that life? How realistic is that? Really? It's a pipe dream. We talk about sometimes ways that maybe we could emigrate to another country despite my spouse being special needs and requiring so much care and stuff. We talk about, you know, maybe somehow we could earn enough or maybe somehow we could like marry around everybody in a way where she could get carried in while the two of us had jobs, or like just as a spouse, or we've talked about trying to get, you know, a job there and then attempt to get her hired to do some little thing. I mean, she's not supposed to work. I don't disagree with the government. They tried to have my spouse work a couple of times, and she just kept ending up in the ER over and over again. And the government was like, "Yeah, this isn't cost effective. This is a bad decision. She should not work." When she was younger, in her late teens, early 20s, they tried to have her do a couple of jobs, and she ended up with permanent conditions from them doing that. Like, but they wanted, I don't know, proof that despite the fact that they had proof of all of her disorders, they wanted proof that her disorders would keep her from being able to work. So they forced her to go to work to do stuff. She kept ending up in the ER and ended up with more disorders. It's so dumb. Every couple of years, I have to do a big, giant, convoluted thing and get notes from all her doctors that she magically isn't cured of disorders that have no known cure. If they haven't created one for it, how could she possibly have stopped having the disorder? Like, it's a giant waste of time and effort, and I mean, in my opinion, tax money. Like, we're paying taxes for the government to force verification from a bunch of doctors that people aren't cured of disorders that have no cure. It's such a waste. Anyway, um, it's a pipe dream. I don't think she's helpless, personally, if you make the situation around her conducive enough. Sometimes she's decently, you know, almost normalish high functioning. Like, she's never fully normal high functioning, but she can get decently high functioning. But it's so hard to get those circumstances together around her that most of the time she's not. She's not stupid. She's just a little slow or to pick up on things, and that's okay. I mean, I've met people who have jobs who are a little slower to pick up on things, but she gets completely panicked and then she just freezes and she can't move and she can have seizures, and then it's like it just all compounds on each other. So you spend most of your time not just taking care of her, but taking care of all the situation around her, trying to create a conducive situation to her being more healthy behaving, um, and feeling like she behaves that way because she feels less upset. Um, but realistically, that can't be pushed far enough that she could just be magically able bodied. I can't cure scoliosis. I can't make it so that she doesn't have to walk with a cane anymore. Like, I can't make it so that she doesn't stop falling. So realistically, that's not super realistic. But every once in a while, I still daydream that maybe she could function just enough so we could immigrate. But I'm not going to put any pressure on her to somehow magically be more capable than is her capacity. Sometimes I wonder if I should go back to college and get some sort of quick degree that might help me be more eligible to emigrate, and then I I could help with that or something. but the things that I'm good at are not typically things that it seems like they want. Like on the lists of workers that they're usually looking for other countries, I'm just not really any of those things. So then that's a little frustrating. I have an associate's degree in leadership. It's really not useful for much. I thought about getting an associate's degree in physical science just so that I could be like, you know, like something health related more. I used to have nurse assistant registration because I worked with people with special needs and stuff, but they're not really looking for nurses assistants. Um, they want like really educated doctors. Like they don't want. I'm good at games, but they're definitely not looking for that. I'm good at caretaking, and I'm good at. I mean, I can write, but that's kind of like a dying thing. I can draw, but I have been so out of practice with it that I probably do not draw very well anymore. And I could try practicing, but they're not looking for people who can draw. My talents are not, hey, you'd make a great immigrant talents, unfortunately. I've always been a leader at things, but like I don't know what I could possibly be qualified to lead that would be enough to get me immigration status. So immigrating is just a pipe dream. It's not very realistic. I don't trust in that. And as much as I like thinking about it, it's not real any more than actually being able to fully transition feels real. Like they both feel like pipe dreams. The girls and I have been hanging out a lot more because of this coronavirus stuff. And, you know, like our girlfriend can be here for like 2 weeks at a time. Um, so it's a lot like we're living together. And then it's just go back to her place for a few days and then she can come back again. Um, so that's a lot of long distance driving for me, but I don't know if we'll end up living together after she graduates or not. I feel like that's a little bit of a pipe dream because I've wanted us to be together before in the past and it hasn't happened more than once and sometimes with devastating results. So it's like we talk about it like sure that can happen, but it's not like it's just not realistic to think, hey, that's what's gonna actually occur. She's gonna get her nice job and start discovering herself and finally not be around her parents terrible, terrible behavior all the time, and they're nonstop terrible expectations. And I mean, if I had lived my entire life like a caged animal because of my parents, when I would get free, why would you immediately want to go into living with someone else? I'm finally free, so I don't actually have expectations. What you want changes when you're actually free. I don't know. But I always give people the opportunity to try, so I just I just don't see the things that I actually like care about being realistic. The girls want to have a big home with space and stuff, and I would be fine with a little, I mean, even a tiny house. But that's not what they want. My girlfriend expects that she's gonna go to work at her full-time job and then come home and we're gonna work on stuff together and we're gonna go garden together and cook together. And I'm like, she ain't gonna have energy for that. I'm just gonna do it all. I'm gonna have to clean the big house and I'm gonna have to do the yard work and take care of the pets and take care of Peaches. I'll cook and she'll cook on the weekends, probably with me. And on the weekends, she might do some gardening with me or something. On the weekends, maybe some of that will happen. But knowing her, on the weekends, it's more likely that she's going to want to do something like go to a lake or have fun, have some stress relief. She's not going to want to do chores because she's going to be exhausted from a week of dealing with job stuff. And she's going to want a break from that. But she doesn't see it that way. She has all these like grand promises she makes, even though she can't follow through on them. But then everyone does that. Like, everyone I've ever met does that. Except for me. I've never met someone else who is like me. And I know they exist. I just haven't met one. Like, actually, in person. My best friend in Singapore is very like me, but we've never met, so so I know people like me exist. They're just elsewhere. It's not really realistic to expect to meet them if they are elsewhere. I don't trust that good things are going to happen because the odds are stacked against me. And sometimes lucky things can happen to anybody. I mean, it could happen. It's not that it's impossible, it's that it's just they're just daydreams. Daydreams are not facts, and daydreams rarely become facts, in my personal experience. Sorry, Disney. The dream that you wish does not always come true. sometimes people do things that surprise you and you're grateful, but it's usually not any of the things that you actually yearn for, that you actually want so deeply. I um I don't know how to find that. If it's a thing somewhere, I don't know how to find it. But I am grateful for the superficial, nice things that aren't the things that I yearn for, but at least they're nice because they are nice. And it does make me feel happiness and relief at the moment. But they're all little things, they're not big things. And I don't know, I've never been very big on the little things, like mattering. Like in that moment, maybe it makes things a little less stressful. So thank you for that because life is way too stressful to not have alleviation from that some. So thank you. But at the same time, it's like that didn't actually change anything permanently for the better. That just sort of made a nice moment. Unfortunately, I want a nice life. I don't know. My life's so much better than it was when I was a child. At least there's that. I've worked hard to try to get away from abuse and away from, you know, not having a reliable, emergency fund or having a reliable, like, where are you going to live next year? Is it still going to be, you know, even an option? Like, I was never in a school for more than 2 years, not a single school I ever went to. Isn't that crazy? And it wasn't because my parents were in the military. It was just because that was how my mother was. There wasn't any consistency, and at least my life has some now. It's not a ton, but at least there's some. And I mean, I'm still in poverty. I'm still considered to be, at the bottom of the poverty threshold by the government. But I mean, my life's a billion times better now than it was when I was in poverty when I was a child. Like, I don't even consider them the same degree of poverty. So, I mean, the government would, but I don't, having experienced them. And at least there's people in my life who say they love me, and I believe that they mean it. And at least there's like a chance that I could maybe transition depending on stuff. If Trump doesn't get elected, then maybe I could still transition. That's something. It's like a 50-50 shot, apparently. I mean, supposedly, 60% of the nation doesn't want him voted back in, and 40% do, which I don't understand those people who are part of the 40%, but that's besides the point. The point is, I mean, do I really think that the 60% who don't want him in are gonna go vote? I mean, this country does not have a very strong history of people actually showing up and voting, so. And I mean, it's a pandemic. Are people actually going to register for absentee voting? People don't usually like to do things that are tedious. The more annoying a thing is to do, the less likely they are to do it. So, do I really think people are going to go and put in the extra work and effort, even though it's not a ton, It's just enough to be annoying to make sure that they can vote this year. I knew someone once when I was growing up who said that he didn't ever ask friends to do stuff for him. He always hired a professional. And he said one single time, I asked a friend to work on my roof. And every weekend when he said he was going to do it, I didn't know if he was going to show up or not because he sometimes had to go to work. And he would never choose my roof over putting food on his family's table. And if you hire someone who's professional, then they're convinced to do the job, not because they give a shit, but because doing the job puts food on their family's table. And the person who's actually going to follow through and do a thing is going to be the person who's going to be able to put food on their table by doing it. And it doesn't matter how good a friend you are with the person, your friendship is not enough to take away that necessity. I feel like that's true of everybody about everything. People can say they're my friend. That doesn't mean they're ever going to follow through with anything. They're going to choose whatever they feel like is important to their survival. You can tell someone 1,000 times that they should get in Discord for group events so we can explain stuff and do call outs. And they don't have to talk. Discord's completely free. So please come listen to what's going on. And they'll still not get in Discord, and they'll still F up the achievements, and they'll still do the wrong thing in the battle, and you'll wipe because this person doesn't go in Discord. And it doesn't matter how many times you say it, it doesn't matter how many different ways you say it, they're going to do what's interesting to them. And if they would rather play with, a movie going on in the background and they don't want to get in Discord because that's tedious, that's what they're going to do. People like to say a bunch of shit about how unhappy they are with the political systems in place, but it would be too much effort for people to actually seek change. So do I actually think that that's what people are going to do? My girlfriend was sad because we couldn't go to the protest because we have to protect my spouse's health. Because if we had caught anything, my spouse would get it and then she could be at risk to die. She was sad we couldn't go to them. And I was sad, but at the same time, as much as I absolutely believe that there needs to be police reform and that we have systematic racism in this country, and as much as I would love to go and be a part of trying to fight for that, I have to choose my family and their survival. And I'm just as guilty as every other person. So I don't hold it against anybody when they can't. But it also means there's no reason to trust. I'm not angry about it. I just don't expect anything. I have a really big issue with being automatically defeated. And I know that. But I don't know how not to be. Because that's usually how it works out. Very little in life seems to work out in favor of progress and making things better. Unless you work your ass off for it yourself, and you can sometimes beat the odds. But it's very rare. I think it's what most people daydream about. Like, I think most people daydream about, oh, winning the lottery, or oh, stumbling into success, or whatever it is, getting that lucky moment, that opportunity, and actually being able to seize upon it when it comes, and stepping forward into a completely different life that's so much better. Maybe that's what immigration, dreaming about that, is for me. It's not the lottery, but it's about the same odds as far as I can tell. Transitioning is just me trying to get to me. I just want to be me. And I have to do a bunch of extra stuff to get to that. And I have to try to figure out how to rely on other people that they're going to be okay. And I've never been good at that. So, why be excited? Is it exciting to imagine for a few seconds being able to look at myself because I actually look like the man that's in my head? Sure. But then I remember how untrue that is, and it just goes away. I don't know how to hold on to that excitement. I don't know. But it would be amazing. Imagining myself transitioned is, if I can tune out the rest of life for just even a few seconds, is like an incredible feeling. It feels better as much as I want to immigrate. It feels better to imagine being a man than it does to imagine being somewhere else, which is like huge for me.